So you got a new guitar for this Christmas. Congrats. But now what?
Hey guys, this is Gus G and you're watching Guitar Gear Guy. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Triple G, coming at you. Now, for those of you who's watching me for the very first time on your YouTube, I affectionately call myself Triple G, or just GGG, short for Guitar Gear Guy. So my channel basically is all about me just kind of showing you different guitar related gear and such. You do not come to my channel to learn how to play an epic guitar. There are other guys who could do that really well, whereas I cannot play well to save my own life. The purpose of this channel since day one always has been me sharing with the viewers, I guess, knowledge in a sense, because when I first started, I had language barrier and everything else. You go to a guitar store, you're afraid to ask certain things. You don't want to look like a noob. And, there are some guys that are snooty in nature and they turn their nose up and they're not really sincere in answering your questions and things of the nature. So I'm here to take you through the journey of guitar playing and whatever, kind of answer the questions you may not have and sort of guide you in the right way. Of course, it is possible that some may have different opinions, and that's quite natural, but I am going to try to answer as earnestly as possible, as well as honestly as possible. Okay, so this video is going to deal with those of you who have either been given a guitar as a Christmas gift, or you bought yourself a new guitar and you are a beginner. So whether you ended up with a brand new electric guitar because you've been asking your mother and father, or you just treated yourself a new hobby and got yourself a guitar, whether that decision was based on Ed Sheeran playing a guitar, Taylor Swift playing a guitar, Maroon 5, whether Lil Wayne, it doesn't matter how you got here, so long as you picked up a guitar. Now, it is true that modern days popular songs, top 40 songs, may not have a whole lot of guitar playing, and as demonstrated by Billie Eilish, who's a great artist, a young artist, and she was asked by Jimmy Kimmel if she is aware of Van Halen, and she obviously didn't know what that was, who that was. Maybe it is not important that you know who Van Halen is, what kind of a historic value that band has in the history of guitar playing. It is irrelevant. Maybe that's not your cup of tea as far as your, flavor of a music you prefer is concerned. So that is irrelevant. So you may be an 11-year-old who was given a brand new starter pack from Guitar Center by your parents. You might be a 39-year-old man who has long wanted to play a guitar and you treated yourself to a brand new guitar for Christmas. Doesn't matter. This video will deal with all of you, and we will start now. So with all that said, it is possible that most of you who got your first guitar may not have gotten a $4,000 Gibson Les Paul Standard, as an example. Most likely you may have been given a starter pack from Guitar Center or various other retail outlets, or you might have gotten yourself a budget-friendly guitar, because nobody starts with guitar that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. So we'll kind of talk about that, but what's important to know is the price of guitar is really not relevant. Okay, so with all that said, there is definitely a difference between some hot pile of garbage versus just cost-effective guitar. If you hand a cheap guitar to someone like Eric Clapton, David Gilmour, by the way, if you don't know who those guys are, they are legendary in guitar playing. They could make cheap guitars sound epic because they know how to play the instrument so well. Whereas you hand me a $10,000 guitar, I can still make that thing sound terrible because I'm a horrible player. So the price of the guitar is not relevant. However, there's a difference between something that is well made, that is cost effective, versus just cheap piece of shit. What's important to also know here is if you've been given something like a Squier starter pack where your guitar is a Squier Bullet or Squier Affinity, very important to note, there's a guy named, I think his name is Jack Pierce. He plays guitar for the Allman Brothers band, and he uses that very guitar out of the box as is with no modification or upgrades done at all. And he is a phenomenal player with a huge tone. So there is, anyone who will turn their nose up because you have a Squier, that really means nothing. Now, if it's not too late and you're watching this video because you're planning to get something and you have not been given anything or bought yourself anything for Christmas yet, establish a budget, whether that's $300, $400, or $500. You're gonna establish that budget, and then what I would recommend is you go get yourself a guitar that is used but very well taken care of for that budget that you have in mind. Because $300 guitar starter pack, of course that's gonna come with like a cheap amp and a cheap strap and this and that, whatever, to get you started. The $300 guitar in used market would most likely have been a brand new $500 guitar, and it's gonna have like much better, it's going to be made with much better components. It's going to have, overall, it would have started its life as a better guitar, for lack of better terms. So earlier in the video, I talked briefly about the price of the guitar being irrelevant, and as a beginner, as just starting out, that is absolutely true, because Toyota Corolla, which is a nice car, is a cost-effective car, will get you from point A to point B just as well as a Porsche 911. You may lack a little bit of a style, it may be a little bit slower, but it's equally capable of the job. But of course, you may enjoy your driving experience a little bit more behind the wheel of a Porsche 911, and we have the similarities here in the world of guitars. So, for example, I'm going to show you this guitar. This is a guitar made by Sterling by Music Man Company. And Music Man is a huge name in guitar making. And they put this version out under the brand of Sterling, which is really geared towards for, like people like us, and, beginners and starters, that's cost conscious. So you're just getting into the hobby, you're not quite sure you're gonna stick to it or not, so you don't wanna go spend $3,000, and this is what you end up with. I believe this sells for about $300, maybe about $270 up to about $350, depending on where you go get. It is a quality instrument. It is very well made, very well set up, and very easy to play, and that's what I wanna talk about. If a guitar is hard to play, then you as a beginner will most likely not stick to this new hobby. Because if you sit down to play and it's just hard to play and it hurts, you're most likely not going to stick around. And that guitar will sit in the corner of a closet, collect dust, and eventually end up on a garage sale, or you may be on Craigslist looking to dump it. So what's important right now is for you to sit down with what you've just bought or what you've just been given and kind of determine where we stand. So one of the first things that I would recommend you to do is get that thing restrung. Because when I say restrung, I mean the 6 strings that are present on your guitar, especially a starter pack guitar where one big box that has the guitar strap, the strings, and couple picks and whatever. The strings that are going to be on there would be the cheaper, lower quality strings, and they're not going to sound very well. So rip those apart and go ahead, put on a new set of strings. like the Slinkies, which are very easy to play. And every now and then you go to Guitar Store and you may see a new string pack that says coated. And coated means they're gonna be coated with special material that's gonna help the strings last longer. So if you sweat a lot, you have sweaty hands and whatever, and you're kind of lazy, you don't see yourself restringing your guitar all that often, I recommend you go with the coated set of strings, which is only a couple bucks more. Now you may say, well, I'm just a beginner, how the hell do I know how to change the strings? Evidently you may have a buddy or two who already knows how to play guitar, he or she can help you. Now if not, it's gonna go to the next advice that I'll give you. Get that guitar set up properly. So when I say set up, that means the strings exchanged, and what I said earlier, if it's easy to play, so make it easy to play. So there is a thing called the string action, which is the distance between the string and this darker part of the guitar neck called the fretboard. So if the string action is high, where it's hard for you to make contact when you press down on the string, and you have to travel a lot to hit that fretboard, that's basically what we call high string action. It's just harder to play. And you don't have the finger strength to develop yet, and if it's that hard to play, you will give up much quicker, and that's what we want to avoid. So if a qualified guitar technician sets up the guitar for you, he or she will be able to set up the string action at proper level, maybe even slightly lower than the proper level where it's easier for you to play. And when you have the guitar professionally set up like that, and I think if you take the guitar to a Guitar Center or whatever, I believe the setup cost is somewhere between like 40 bucks to 70 bucks. Of course, if you got yourself a $100 guitar, that we're already talking super high cost, expense right out of the gate. But I think that money will help setting you up for the long run, and money very well spent. So, part of the setup may be adjusting this part right here, and that's this little white part, right where the fretboard turns into the guitar headstock. So this white piece here is called a guitar nut, and all the strings will go right through that guitar nut. And that also has implications on your string action, aforementioned string action. So if the if the nut is not cut well out of the factory, it may sit high, or it may sit in a different funky angle, and that's gonna have implication on what your guitar sounds like. Now, let's say you had a little bit more money and you didn't get a starter pack, and you got yourself a really well taken care of used guitar. One of the things, same principles apply, maybe a new set of strings. If you got it from, big retail box store like Guitar Center or Sam Ash or whatever, and if the guitar was hanging on the wall where it was molested by countless guitar shoppers or wannabe guitar shoppers that just sat there and noodled around inside the store, those strings will have to go, definitely. So get that restrung as soon as possible. But also at the same time, maybe you may not need a setup, even though I highly recommend it. What you want to do is, when you take the strings off, in the grooves of the guitar nut here, you want to put a little bit of what's called nut sauce, no pun intended. There's a product called the nut sauce that will help you lubricate where the strings make contact with the nut, where the strings will freely move as you're playing, so it doesn't grab onto the string, where you will either snap the string or it's just gonna get caught, get you into a funky pitch. So that's all bad. Now, if you don't want to spend money on getting some nut sauce, which is not that expensive, by the way, it's like $7 per bottle. You could also grab a pencil and get a razor blade and just kind of get some graphite shaving onto each of the 6 grooves, and that will also do exactly the same thing. Okay, so if you bought a guitar hanging on the wall and you walked away with something like this, great. Now, if your parents, or however you ended up with one, if you got yourself a starter pack, you probably have one of the two that I'm about to show you. Your guitar may look something like this, where probably not this exact one, by the way. This guitar is about $1,000, but your guitar may look like something like this, where it's got 3 pickups, couple of the knobs, 2 or 3 knobs. It's gonna have this kind of a plastic pickguard, we also call the scratch plate. Some kind of a whammy bar type of situation, may or may not. Let's see what else. So that's kind of what your guitar may look something like this. So what I just showed you is probably going to be Squier by Fender. That would be the brand. You may have also received a starter pack from Epiphone by Gibson. So Gibson, if you have one of those packs, your guitar will look something like this. So it's going to look a little bit different than earlier. You know, it's Lambo versus Ferrari, and you know, Toyota versus Camry. They're gonna all look somewhat similar, but they have a little bit of a different design cues. Okay, so we could get super technical and talk about how this type of guitar is different than what I showed you earlier. So this thing, just from looking at it, already different than the Squier guitar that may have been what was in your present Christmas gift. So this thing is different. There is no whammy bar. It only has 2 pickups. Now, is the other guitar with 3 pickups better than this guitar because it's got 3 over 2? Not necessarily. That's not important to you right now. We'll talk about that later in different episode. So again, Epiphone brand is a value brand that Gibson uses to put out lower priced, more affordable guitars. And if that's what you ended up with, great. There's nothing wrong with it. You just want to make sure, like what I mentioned earlier, your strings get changed, your string height action is set properly. Of course, we could talk about things like whether the frets are sprouting out. And what I mean by that is all these different frets that you see, these fret wires, them sticking out outside of the guitar neck, where when you move your hand up and down, it's like slicing your hand. That's a bad situation, and that is going to be one of the qualities you look for in a quality guitar. Now, on the lower priced budget guitar that the companies put out in a starter pack guitars, it may be possible that you may have 1 or 2 of those fret wires sticking out. If so, when you take your guitar to a guitar tech for a setup that I mentioned earlier, you might want to ask them, hey, can you file away the fret wire that's sticking out? And he or she, the guitar tech, will know what you mean by that. Of course, if it's a good tech, they're gonna know to deal with that anyway. Now, as you go through this journey with your guitars and whatever, at some point you're gonna run into possibly wanting to get away from the little amp that your starter pack came with, and that's a very natural progression, I think. And of course, you talk to your friends, they're gonna talk about how the tube amps are where it's at, the valve amps if you live in UK. Yes, maybe the tube amps are great because historically that's how it's been. That's a tube amp, this is a tube amp, that's a tube amp, and that's a tube amp. But they're also, sometimes they're gonna be very expensive. So you as a just as a starting out, you may not want to go down that road. Maybe you get yourself a little, by the way, that's a 3-watt battery powered amp, which is great, but probably no different than your starter pack amp. So you will eventually graduate, migrate over to a better amp. Like I think there's basically, we can categorize into like 4 different amps. So you have the clean amp, like the Fender amps. You're gonna go you're gonna go like a high gain amps if you're in the like a crowd of metal. Then you're gonna go like the Marshalls and what have you. Then there's a 3rd category, which I would say like a boutique-ish amp, like a Divided by 13, Matchless, Milkman, these type of amps. But they're gonna be very expensive. And then there's the 4th kind, which I would just kind of put it as a digital amps. So these would be solid state amps, or they're gonna be what we call modeling amps. So Line 6 makes a thing called the Spider. PV makes Viper. There's Yamaha, really super great little practice bedroom amp by Yamaha called the THR, which comes in various sizes. Line 6 also makes something called the Helix. Of course, you could go into this rabbit hole of a digital modeling thing and go into things like Kempers and Axe FX, which cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So maybe we're not quite there yet. So those are the things that you would consider as you go along on this journey when you decide you're going to stick to guitar playing. You have found your liking, you have decided to stay. So that's where it will get at. And then eventually the time will come where you go, I love this guitar that I got for the Christmas in 2019. Maybe I should upgrade something, or so you may come to ponder whether you're going to upgrade or not. And if that time comes and you're still with your starter guitar, I would say I would suggest that you start with upgrading your tuners, because tuners will help you. Tuners are, by the way, these things where the strings go onto and you kind of turn to tune the guitar. So the tuning heads will help you when you have better ones, help you stay in tune better, and just overall the quality upgrade. By the time you start contemplating whether you're going to upgrade the pickups or not, now you have to sit back and go, do I invest $200 into my $150 guitar to change out the pickups? Because when you change out pickups, most likely you're going to pay a tech to do it, because there's a soldering involved. Maybe you don't know how to solder, you don't know how to wire these things. So not only you have to pay for the pickups, but you have to pay a tech to solder that thing in, and most likely you're going to have to change out the potentiometers as well, which sit behind these little volume knobs and tone knobs and such. So at that point, you kind of need to make a decision. Do I sink $200 into my $150 guitar? So that decision has to be made carefully. So at that point, maybe it's time that you graduate out of the starter guitar and move on to something better and something more in tune with what you like. Maybe you got into the whole guitar playing because you love Metallica, but you've been given a Squier Affinity by Fender. Nothing wrong with that Squier guitar. I love those Squiers. It's not necessarily suitable to play Metallica tunes or Periphery tunes or whatever your choice of band is for heavy music. Now, as you go through this journey of whole guitars, and by the time you start getting serious into it because you took some lessons and you love the guitar playing and you want to take it to the next level, you're looking at different guitars possibly because you figure you've grown out of the starter guitar, you're gonna see a lot of different words being tossed around, and stuff like active pickup versus passive pickup. That's a thing, but that's not important to you right now. We'll cross that bridge down the road. You may hear something like a relic finish, and you're gonna see a brand new guitar that looks like it's been around for 35 years. Yes, people pay thousands of dollars to have their brand new guitar look completely beaten up. That's a thing. Again, that is not important to you right now. We'll cross that bridge when we get there down the road. Also, you may hear words being tossed around like nitrocellulose finish versus polyurethane finish. Yes, that's a thing. Again, it's not important to you right now. Don't pay attention to that. We'll get to that later on down the road. Again, even from the 3 examples that I showed you today, all have different type of bridge. This type of bridge where it's a pneumatic bridge with a stop tail versus a floating bridge called Floyd Rose versus a non-locking bridge, but it also still floats. So, different type of bridges will again come into play next time you're shopping for a different guitar as you upgrade. Again, probably not as important for us to dwell on that now, even though later on down the road you aspire to be the next Yngwie next to Kirk Hammett. If you don't know who they are, that's okay. I understand. I'm old AF. And if you're 11-year-old, I don't expect you to know. And that's completely okay. I don't know if Billie Eilish uses a tremolo on her guitar. I don't know. I'm sure Taylor Swift doesn't. So whoever your inspirations are, it's okay. There's no music is music. No music is better than the other. Although I could say a couple genres that I don't particularly care for, but we're not here to discuss that. So different type of bridges may come into play next time you're shopping for a different guitar. We'll again cross that bridge when we get there. All right. So this has been a very mouthy episode, but I wanted to share certain basic things with you guys who are brand new to guitar playing, who may have stumbled upon my episode. And if you are seeing me for the very first time, I thank you for your time watching. If you wouldn't mind, click subscribe button, hit the bell notification, hit the like button, leave me a comment, ask me a question, whatever. It helps me understand that I'm not just talking in front of a camera to no one. That's nobody watching or whatever. It helps me that I'm not insane, some psychopath that's just sitting in front of the camera talking to no one. So it does help. So all right, that's been an episode. So I will come back with another episode for those of you who are starters, and kind of help you navigate through the world of guitar playing or guitar as a hobby altogether. Now, you may have gotten an acoustic guitar as a starter pack, and to those of you, this episode probably didn't really mean much. Maybe you didn't stick around to even watch this far along. I understand. So up till now, you've been awesome watching. I've been Triple G. Until next time, you guys all take care and be good humans as always. Triple G out.